Good morning, everybody. Welcome to TLD Cast. It's Thursday. That means you made it past hump day, and that means that it's almost the weekend. Give yourselves a pat on the back. Check your to-do list. If you're working with Sam Rogers and he's helping you be a little bit more productive, look at that box or that list of items that you've got to do today or that you want to have finished this week, and make sure you get those done. And I'm hoping that one of those things is either getting yourself registered for TLDC 19 or having a friend get registered. If you've told some of your friends about TLDC 19 and you're not sure if they've registered yet or they're still kind of on the fence, make that your to-do list today. Reach back out to them and say, hey, have you registered yet? Are you going to be there? I'd love to see you there. So reach out and do that today. Also, share TLDC 19 with your networks. Click that share button. You can share TLD Cast. Quetzalcoatl has dropped in some fantastic links, all the most important links about TLDC. Thank you so much. And those are going to give you all of the right locations, all of the right places, all of the things that make up the TLDC community, all the locations. TLD Cast is just one of the places that we hang out as a community of professionals and get better at the work that we do in training, learning, and development. But we also have the Slack channel. We call that TLD Chat, and you can go to tldchat.us and hang out with us 24/7. with your community, your tribe, your peers, your colleagues, and learn from them, ask questions, make comments about things, anything that's going on in your career. You're looking for some contractors. Maybe you're looking for work. You just kind of never know who's going to be connected to who at any given time. So staying connected, staying active, letting people know what your challenges are, different things that you can offer. Always valuable to do, and Slack is a great place to do that. So we also have the face-to-face part of what we do coming up, TLDC 19. So we have all of these different elements that basically at the end of the day form the community and all of the things that we do together. I know most of you in the chat have been hanging out with us for a long time, and so you get it, right? You see the difference, you see the value, you know what it means to be part of a community, to find your tribe of professionals and to learn and to grow in your career, and to just know that you can do the work of training, learning, and development better, faster, cheaper, $6 million man-ish than anybody else. So super excited to have all of you here today. We have a great guest with us today, and I am really, really excited to hear from Danny Stefanic from Learnbrite. I am an old-time user developer of VR. Some of you I've told this story to during some of our VR sessions, but I was creating virtual reality in a tool called Superscape, and I think Danny's the first person in years that that actually knew what I was talking about. So super excited to have Danny here today to talk with us about some of the things in VR. We've dropped some questions in the Ask a Question section. And so if you guys are new to that part of what we do here, you can vote up those questions. So click on that Ask a Question section and vote up which question you'd like us to go after first. You can absolutely do that. And from there, I think we're all good, which means I'm going to go ahead and just give the official hello to Danny this morning, or good afternoon, I should say, for you in your current location. Where are you at?
That's right. I'm currently traveling, so I'm in Spain, speaking to people from the other side of the planet. But you might notice from the accent, I'm actually Australian, but our company is based in Phoenix, so we're close partners here.
Yeah, and super excited about that. I obviously didn't do my homework well enough because I had no idea you were in Phoenix, but a wonderful surprise this morning for us. So tell us a little bit about yourself and who Danny is.
Yeah, sure. And just as you were saying before, you were working with VR many, many years ago. There's actually been 3 waves of VR hype in the tech industry. And I've actually been there for all three. So way back in 1994, I started the Virtual Reality Association.
Oh,
and we were doing all sorts of crazy VR stuff pre-internet. So things with CD-ROMs and kiosks and VR equipment.
yep.
And so I've 25 years experience of building companies around VR. And I actually brought in a little thing I have with me today, which is a virtual reality headset. Now this got, you guys, you've seen lots of virtual reality headsets on the market, but look at this one; it's really shiny and beautiful. But it's actually all foldable. You can take it onto a plane. It has earbuds that come out. It's really, really sexy and attractive. Very lightweight. And not only does it look really cool, the visor flips up, which is great for things. But it has a little dial on the side here, which you can flick between see-through mode or virtual reality. So you can kind of see through there a bit, and I can flip it and it goes closed. So it's a virtual reality and augmented reality headset. Looks fantastic, and slick, folds up really nicely into this little device.
And to think that we were making them back in '99, right?
that was from '97, right? And built by Sony back then. And so we've been through a few waves. So it's incredible. It's been an incredible journey. I'm like a walking history book for VR. But now we're building a company based on a lot of stuff we've done in the past that actually brings that into learning and training, and specifically in the browser using WebXR. So that's where we're at today, and it's pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, and just really excited in general to hear more about it. But I mean, since you've been doing this for such a long time, how did you do anything else before that, or did you just sort of come out of elementary school and say, I'm doing VR the rest of my life and that's it?
I think, I got bitten by the bug at the time in those early days. I just couldn't put it down because I saw the potential. For me, it was massive. It's actually, it's more of a philosophical reason for getting involved, and it's about human history. So when the internet came about, we started digitizing previous formats. Like we had text before the internet, we had photos and images, we had audio and voice, and we had video. And we took all those and we digitized them and put them online, which is really great, and has produced a lot of amazing things. But there's another media type, which is 3D content. And that, as a media type, is really young in the age of humans. It's only something that's really been around since the birth of computers. Before that, it was building models or architecture. It was really the expression of 3D, sculptures. But now 3D as a media type is something that's starting to become somewhat mainstream and reaching a critical mass.
Yeah.
And that is probably one of the most exciting things for human history. We're about on the cusp of a new media type becoming as pervasive as images, video, audio, and text. And when you look at it through that lens, it doesn't matter if it's training or marketing or any other opportunity. This is a new way for people to communicate, and that's what got me way back then, this vision. Yeah. And so that's, once you see that happening, I was very early in the market, probably too early, but that's what keeps me going, because I see that as a point in human history where that flips to critical mass, and it's only going to happen once. And that, to be a part of that, is pretty exciting.
Yeah, I can remember when I built my first virtual reality experience in Superscape, and I said it couldn't be done. I had a fantastic manager at the time that said, I just want you to try, find some software, find something, and build a virtual reality training simulation. And I said, it's not valuable. It's not, I was not a proponent, but I did it. I found Superscape, I built it, and it told me and I tested it out, and I saw the results of teaching people inside of that environment take a 25-step process that used to take days to teach people all the different ways to do things, and reduce it down to 30 minutes, an hour of them just going through this simulation over and over again and memorizing it. And that was the part that changed my mind altogether. And I was like, okay, now I get it. I get what people are saying, and I haven't seen as effective of a training, a media being used to train somebody on physical processes yet. I mean, with the exception of maybe the Real Thing, right? Like companies like big companies like Intel and others. I can remember, I think Qualcomm maybe, and their semiconductor division built a complete building that was a fab, that was a complete replica of their real fab. And that's where they went and they trained everybody in there first, and they did the new hire onboarding before they let them go in and start building microchips and doing all of that in the regular fabs. But I mean, that's millions, hundreds of millions of dollars for them to do that. And then to be able to think, wow, we can just build that same training environment in a virtual space and get the same learning outcomes. That's a huge deal for business. And then when I saw it just all tank and nobody saw the vision back in the day, I mean, I'm sure the frustrations that you've run into are similar. To see it kind of ebb and flow like that, for it to be so obvious to you, right, that it's a really powerful medium, but to not see it catch on, it's got to hurt.
Yeah, I guess that was kind of frustrating. But what really happened in the industry was that the markets went for mainstream mass adoption, and then when it didn't turn out, they retracted into niche markets. So we're all familiar with the simulation and training market. What flight sims and military training, those sorts of things, which are very high end, very particular, very high skilled, quite separate to traditional e-learning and corporate training. But that whole market now is on a collision course with the e-learning market. They're both synergizing in a very, very clean way, which is absolutely terrific. So there is all of this history and lessons to be learned that are being brought to the table. And a lot of the new VR companies aren't really taking heed of that. And the same thing goes with serious games. We've all heard about serious games. They've been in action, since the early days of Flash. Yeah. And really all of the same reasons that serious games exist are the same benefits that apply to VR. Being able to go through scenarios, fail in safety, work in places that might be hazardous or reasonable to get people into, they all apply. It's the same thing that just becomes more engaging and more immersive, which leads to better retention. And that's the great thing about the VR components. But all the reasons that serious games work are the same ones why VR works.
Yeah, it's an amazing technology, to be sure. It looks like we've got people dropping their own questions into the Q&A as well. And don't forget, everybody, to get in there and vote these questions up. Jonathan wants to know, he says, I want to get into this, but I'm the only one at my org. What skills do I need? Blender, Unity? Maybe what do you...
That's a terrific question. And it really depends on what your learning objectives are. Most people think it takes a high level of skills to start to get involved. And that's why we built our platform Learnbrite, which is anyone who has the capability of writing a PowerPoint should be able to create a VR experience. I think we've actually delivered on that with the Learnbrite platform. But because employing traditional ways of creating an experience, you would get a couple of Unity programmers, you'd build an application in Unity, and a lot like serious games in the past, then it becomes kind of compiled and it's stuck in that mode. You can't get the instructional designer to jump in and make changes very easily. And you need expensive programmers to make changes again frequently. And you usually need to deploy an app within an organization, which is a whole big point of friction, getting it through IT security approval. And that's why we've stuck to web technology. So everything you can do in Unity, we do. I love it, Jonathan. You had me at PowerPoint. Fantastic. So everything that A-Frame is a good example. That's a great framework to start building on. Our platform is all on WebXR, or the new standard that replaces WebVR, and is specifically built for learning to deploy as SCORM modules. It integrates with all of the learning management systems. That it's really tailored from learning for the ground up, and even works in old browsers like Internet Explorer 11. So you can deploy it across a whole organization. I actually interviewed 200 of the Fortune 500 companies, and still 20% of them are using Internet Explorer 11 inside their organization. And if you're not meeting that, you're throwing away 20% of the market. So optimization to run on those platforms, Chromebooks, those sorts of things, really challenging. But so I guess, starting with the WebXR technology is what I'd recommend, because then you can deploy it through learning management systems rather than getting all of that headache, burden and friction of getting people to deploy apps in an organization. So definitely worth looking at the website of these things. In fact, we mentioned earlier, there's a URL I'm going to share with you here, which is a 3D auditorium we whipped up just for this little presentation here. So Molly is fantastic, way too quick, but you can go in there and check it out. It's just a little auditorium example. Really just did it 5 minutes before the call and whipped it up, and it's there. We can add bots and you can drop URLs in there and all sorts of things, but it gives you an idea of what it's like to be an avatar in a space. Yeah.
So what, so, it sounds like it's super easy to use, and we, is everybody going to need some sort of sense of 3D design? Because I know a lot of us are, we're good at maybe 2D design, and we've gotten really good at, building all of the little boxes and text and dealing with fonts and all that kind of stuff. But to make that leap into building objects and building a space and building an environment, even with a really easy tool, it's a bit of a steep learning curve. Does that still exist?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, if you try our platform, you'll see how easy it is to edit.
Okay.
It's really fun. You do it all in the browser, which is neat, and it uses the metaphors that you might be more familiar with 2D document editing. But the really great thing that I mentioned before was that 3D is reaching a critical mass. And so I did a presentation the other day, and the person in their background had a amphibious vehicle, one of these cars that go into water from the 1960s. Really cute little thing, I love it. And just in that presentation, I was able to search online and find a full detailed 3D model of this particular car from 1967. And that goes to show just the amount of content out there. You can find almost anything. And there are lovely 3D repositories, a lot of which have assets you can use in commercial projects for free. Okay. So there is sketchfab.com, which has 3D objects. You can click on downloadable, find ones that have the attribution you can use, tens of thousands there of objects. There is SketchUp, which is actually a 3D warehouse that came from Google originally, but Trimble bought it. And that has lots and lots of items as well. And then more recently, the bigger other companies have got into it. There is a search engine from Google called Poly, P-O-L-Y, and they have tons of 3D items there as well. And Microsoft's got in on the party, and now they have a thing called remix3d.com. Again, tons of free 3D content that you can use. And then there's commercial sites like TurboSquid and others where you can purchase things, for between $10 and $100 for a 3D model. And so that sort of availability and access of content, and then just mashing that up in the Learnbrite platform for training, makes it super simple. And we've got our own library of objects and room templates that come with the platform. But really, you can start to mash up using existing content, and then only when you need to engage a 3D modeler to maybe build an exact replica of your campus or whatever it happens to be, your widget, your product. That's where you might need to get a 3D modeler involved.
Yeah, and are there still lots of concerns around polygons and polygon count and facets and all that kind of stuff? And what about formats too? Is there a particular, because I know there's a lot of different 3D object formats out there. What are some of the tech things people need to be looking for if they're going to start searching for this stuff?
Well, I come from the days of VRML, if anyone remembers an acronym there. But the format of today is GLTF. The GLTF file format is not only particularly good in a couple of ways. One is that you can create GLB files, which are binary compressed files. So think of it like a zip file that contains all of the textures and the geometry of the image all in one little thing, which makes it easy to pass around. Okay. But the greater part about that standard is its adoption by the big guns in the industry. So it's supported by Google. Microsoft support it as well. Most people don't know this, but Microsoft has a 3D desktop environment called the Mixed Reality Portal. It comes with every instance of Windows 10 since the Fall Creators Edition back in 2017. So everybody has a VR 3D desktop if they're running Windows 10, but it supports those format files as well. And most importantly, you can actually, as you would post an image or a video to Facebook, you can post a GLB file up there and put that 3D object as a post as well. So this is really pervasiveness of a format that allows for a whole stack of different uses, not just in training, but also marketing. So that's my go-to format. And then there's FBX, which is used in Unity projects. You can also pull them into web-based experiences. And there's a few others, but GLTF is definitely the one I'd recommend that you go with to have your assets in a very open format that will work across most of the major sites.
Let me just make sure I'm hearing you right. So it's
GLT.
GLT. So like
really great, memorable name for a pervasive format.
Yeah, I'm trying to like make it into a word, and it's hard to say GLTF. So
exactly. Yeah.
So that would be like it would end up being like a .gltf. I mean, it's
correct.
The format suffix is what it looks like. Okay, cool. Yeah, good to know. Good to know. I mean, this is all new to me. I kind of have just let go of it for a while because Marco Ficini's here, and so he's my go-to VR guy these days. And I just talk to him if I ever need to know anything about VR these days, because he's been dialed in on that kind of stuff. So it's fun to have you here, Marco, as well. Good to see you, sir. Let's see. Let's jump in on one of these other questions dropped in. Let's go with companies like Adobe Captivate have also labeled themselves as easy ways to get started with VR training. What benefits does Learnbrite provide its authors that they can't get anywhere else? That's a good question.
Yeah. Well, if we look at the industry at the moment, there's some really cool tools that are being deployed. I mean, we've got the top slideshow-based training companies, Adobe and Articulate and Trivantis. And Adobe have released 2019 VR capabilities. So in Captivate, you can make essentially a 360 tour. So you can put in panoramas or videos, 360s, what you would normally see in virtual real estate tours.
Okay.
With hotspots. So this is really something that's come about as the sort of starting point for VR.
Yeah.
And Trivantis have a thing called Scenario with a C, Scenario VR, and that does the same thing. That's a 360 authoring tool. You put in your panorama, you place hotspots and trigger events based on what you're clicking on. So that's one level of virtual reality. With the Learnbrite platform, we support that, but a lot more. You can actually have avatars and multi-user. As some of you've already checked out the auditorium there, so there's a few people hanging around in there.
So it is true. What you've got then is true virtual reality, as in it's a 3D environment with objects in it, and you can move around in that environment. We're not just talking about taking a bunch of pictures and stitching them together and having someone be able to do circles around the room.
We support both because they're both equally valid. So capturing a real world environment with a 360 photo or video is great for certain learning and training contexts. And having a 3D environment where you can navigate around more freely and explore also has value.
Yeah.
And adding multi-user to that so you can see other people who are present and engage with them and interact. And then adding things like bots, AI bots that you can interact with that express themselves and make you respond in some sort of scenario, whether it's a branching scenario or an AI-driven scenario, also very important.
A non-player character, as they would say.
Yes. It really is now taking what would normally be those cutout characters you see in slideshow training to a whole new level. Expressive, emotional characters that change based on the circumstances and the interactions that you've played start to change how they respond, and that makes it a completely different experience.
Yeah.
And I like what Kim was asking actually about, is wearing a headset required? And that's another really important aspect about deploying via web-based technologies, which Learnbrite is, that it works on flat screens. and can also work in VR and AR headsets. So I'll give you an example. One of our clients has 60,000 staff, but they only have a handful of headsets, and they're spread all around the globe. There's no way you're going to ship headsets to everyone or buy headsets for everyone, or have powerful enough computers or phones to insert in those headsets that would run all of that, and the cost would be a nightmare. So when you look at it, most of the learning objectives that you need to achieve, most of them will be learning objectives that can be met on a flat screen and are enhanced in VR versus learning objectives that are VR only. And that might be something like learning to operate a crane, motor memory skills. Those sorts of things work really well in VR only, but you cut down your audience size and deployment becomes so hard that it's hard to get a return on investment. If you go to the other side and look at most of the learning requirements that could be achieved in serious games, for example, you get 90-something% of your learning objectives can be deployed on a flat screen, be it a tablet, a phone, an old netbook or a Chromebook. And so you have that 3D experience like you can see now with that auditorium link. But if you have a VR headset, then it's going to be life-size. The memories are going to be stronger. The impact of retention is much higher. And the engagement, because you block everything else out when you're in the headset, is 100%. You can't have that extra notification. There's other thing happening. So your attention is much higher. So these benefits add to the training outcomes, but they're not absolutely required. And because you can deploy it to every device across an organization, and it'll work delivered out of a learning management system just like any other piece of content, your return on investment is legitimate, and therefore you can justify it. It's easy to get through procurement or the decision makers, and that's how we see the vision of training, and that's been working really successfully for us. And I really encourage others to start looking at that, whether it's Adobe scenario or Learnbrite, which takes it to a whole new level. All of these are great solutions to start tinkering.
Yeah, so I'm gonna stop you just for 1 second and just let people think about one thing that you just said, and this is something that I've mentioned before that I don't think gets talked about much, but you mentioned just the fact that it blocks everything out, all of the other distractions, and that in and of itself is a value of wearing the headsets. Because I know a lot of people will talk about that all the things that VR adds as a benefit. And I think one of the most important things is exactly what you said, is that what does it take away? And it takes away all those distractions. And that is a huge value. And it takes it away for positive reasons, right? No notifications, right? No other windows open on your screens. You're 100% forced to focus on that content and to engage fully in that space, whether you're talking with other people that are in that space or whatnot. So I just wanted to really put an emphasis on that, because I do think from a learning perspective and from an instructional design perspective, that's something that just kind of gets skipped over a lot. And I'll have you comment more on that in a minute. And I also want to come back and talk more about the implementation and maybe some case studies and some experiences that you've had with companies implementing this in as part of a larger learning solution or as part of their training experience. Because I think at the end of the day, once we get past all the shiny object stuff, people are going to say, okay, now how do I do it? How do I influence people, right? How do I, what does it cost to do a big implementation? And all those questions are going to start popping up. So give me 1 or 2 minutes to take a quick break here real quick at the 30-minute mark. And then we'll jump back and you can jump into the chat and talk to folks in there while I ramble on a little bit about my favorite topic. Yes, you all know what it is. It's TLDC 19, and it's coming up fast. And one thing that we have not done in a while, and yeah, that's right, we're going to do it. We're going to do synchronized social sharing. I expect to see everybody's tweets up at the end of this. I will go check and I will go like all of your tweets, but I want everybody to click that share button right now. Unless you're sort of listening to this on the treadmill through a mobile device or something and it's a little bit harder, I'll let you guys slide. But click that share button. You'll get a share the event box pop up. Then click Twitter. Then I want you to, the link to this cast, this crowdcast, this TLD cast gets dropped in there. And I just want you to say something really nice about the conversation so far and about Danny and about VR and about all the cool things so that you can tell your network that, hey, you know what, there's still 30 minutes left for you to jump in and to get all the value from TLDcast today. And don't forget to use the hashtag TLDcast. And I'm going to say TLDcast is talking about super cool VR today. Join us. All right. If everybody's ready to click that tweet button, you've probably already clicked it. But if you haven't, in 3, 2, 1, click that tweet button and the synchronized simultaneous social sharing will have occurred. I hope you all enjoyed that. I know I did. Tons of fun to do that. I know I haven't done it in a while, and you guys can virtually roll your eyes at me. I appreciate that every single time. But I want you guys to know that we're going to have a great time at TLDC 19. And if you have not registered, if you have not brought a friend or told a friend about it, do so today and you will feel much, much better. Yes, see, it makes you feel good, doesn't it? just knowing that you shared and that you did something good to be a part of the community together. Yes, thanks, Christopher. The community that tweets together stays together. This is true. So let's go back to our conversation because we're going to be talking about VR and AR and a bunch of the things that we're talking about today. We're also going to be talking about at TLDC 19. So we've got 27 minutes remaining for, in Myra's words,
minds will be blown.
She's not here today, but she gave me that to use at my leisure. So that's just kind of how we roll around here. Sorry, guys. Danny. All right. So I gave you a little bit of time to think it through and tell us a little bit about, maybe some good case studies that everybody can kind of sink their teeth into and go, oh, now I see how this can be used or how I might be able to use it.
Yeah, for sure. We've got a number. We started Learnbrite 3-4 years ago nearly, and we've had clients along the road for the entire length of that time. So it's really been positive. One of those is a university in Australia called Curtin University, and they came to us with a need. It was their school of physiotherapy. So they have students come in, and eventually the students get sent out in the real world as social workers. They go on into the environment. They go to people's homes and do assessments of the risk of falls and risks to a patient in their own homes. And that's a kind of a nervous experience for students if they've not done it before, but it's also a chance for them to really screw up. So they wanted to have some way of dealing with that ahead of time. And the traditional training materials were reading a document about a scenario and then writing an assessment. They then later on improved that by having an elderly person come in as an actor and role play in the university. But that could only take maybe 1 or 2 students at a time to go through that role play. And so the bandwidth was really slow for getting people through it, and also hard to assess because it's all very subjective. And so we built with them a virtual home visit. So you could actually use this online. It was part of the learning management system. They'd get assigned a course. They could go in there and do 3 attempts at a virtual home visit. So they go there and the student would talk to a mentor. This is all pre-scripted, so with branching scenarios. And the student would go into that. Most of the students did it flat screen instead of in VR. And they'd go and talk to the mentor, the husband of the Violet, who is the patient, and also to Violet herself, but also explore the environment, looking for hints of things that might be a slip risk, something that might make you trip over, or hints of other things like prior injuries. Oh, there's a wheelchair in the garage. What could that mean? And those sorts of things as you tour around the house, which was split into 4 levels. You do the front yard first, then the ground floor, then the upstairs floor, and then the backyard. And through there, you got into conversations. You also learn and gain knowledge factors. The idea is as you go through the branching scenarios, you discover these knowledge factors while identifying physical risk items. And all of that goes back as a score into the learning management system. So suddenly it was something that students could play anywhere, anytime. And they could go through the attempts when they wanted to, and the score was compiled down to something that the learning management system could use, so it formed a standard part of the reports they were used to getting for other online learning. And that's been so successful, it's won some awards and funding, and now we're actually, they've been funded to do a virtual hospital visit. So another experience that goes on to that. And that's actually been so successful that other universities are syndicating that. So this is another good part. Just like off-the-shelf training we see in e-learning, the same thing can be done with VR training as well. It's really good, and you can rebrand and change the text or the policy information of the discussions with bots. So it makes it really easy to deploy. That's just one example, but I think it covers a lot of benefits in one.
Yeah.
I have more. I can go on for hours.
I know. I'll bet you could. And no, that was a good one. I'm glad you picked that because, well, for multiple reasons. I mean, one, my wife does home health care here in the States, and she specializes in fall prevention. So that particular topic is close to home for me. But I absolutely see the value in that. And we were also just having a conversation in the Slack group, TLD chat. And I don't know if Ann Copens is here. Oh, yeah, I see her there. Yeah, she was asking about, e-learning, not, a lot of learning out there is not, it just doesn't live up to our expectations these days, with people just sort of repurposing podcasts and things like that. And one of the things that I think is really cool about VR and AR is that I think that's the next place. There's so many other people. There's so many, platforms for people to just throw up a video and say, I'm a course developer, and share their content, which is great, by the way. I'm not knocking it at all. I think for a lot of different people and a lot of folks, it's great. But for us as professionals, we get kind of frustrated by it. So for us to be able to see, okay, what can we use? What tools can we use to take, self-paced e-learning really to that next level? That's where the VR and AR stuff comes in, and where I think we need to start. It's where we can add unique value that is that's different than what's currently out there right now. I guess is really what I'm trying to get at. So, yeah, I don't know.
I think you're absolutely right. It is where instructional designers have been held back by the technical limitations of having to have a whole team around them to produce things, and now that barrier has been put aside. So it really comes down to the instructional designer. And the only real change in producing content now is to think non-linear. So beforehand, mostly with video or slideshows, you'd go bang, bang, bang all the way to the end. And that was also a part of what made people bored with training. We see a big cry out for we need more engagement with training from organizations. So now, thinking non-linear just means how can you set points within the experience where a person is making a decision. And that creates more of a lean forward learning experience where they're engaged and paying attention rather than lean back and just consume. So that it doesn't take too much to get into that type of experience. And we have on our site, when you sign up for the demo, you get a 10-minute tutorial that teaches you how to do this all in the browser. And that's a great way to start writing a bot script and seeing how that works. And that is really, it is really that simple to think about linear. Wherever you see in a script that you've written or instructions you've written, if or then, that's all crying out to you saying, here is where you could branch, and let a person go down that path of what it's like to fail. What is it like to not use this skill that I'm training you? And what is it like to use this skill that's training you, and see the outcome of both of those? And that's the lesson. So you don't need to go as deep and create such big information dumps that people tend to do, lots of slides of information and people just being talked at. Yeah. You can give them a 3 to 5 minute experience on that one topic, and they learn it. It becomes a memory. So that's really where I see it's just a complete shift in training that's going to meet the expectations of today's learners. We see on Facebook and all the other social platforms how engaging they are.
Yeah.
And then a person comes from that scape and then comes into the corporate learning environment, and it's just not matching up. It's not delivering the instant rewards, the gratification and the engagement they're used to. And that's where we need to meet the audience, because the audience is and has in the younger generations completely changed.
Yeah, I think, and to add something here real quick before I forget, somebody was asking, and I think it might even have been in the Ask a Question section, but what are some of the best topics or content areas where VR plays a role? And one of the things that I learned from my early experiences, and I think it still kind of holds true today, and you can help me here by adding to it, but I have always tried to keep it really simple and just tell people if there's a physical process, if there's anything physical, VR is a great place to go to first. I know there's ways we can use it for a lot of different things, but I found in the business setting that if there's a physical process, also with a software process where workers have to engage with a computer, maybe scanning boxes or looking up something to start a machine or something like that, and then do a physical process with that machine and engage with the computer or something along those lines. That virtual reality, it does, you could put somebody through a week of training them on the software and then another week of shadowing somebody on the job, watching them do it, or you could just blend the two into a virtual environment and just have them actually experience the job and fail and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the approach I've taken. Is there more we can add to it now that I've missed over the years?
Well, I think we're seeing a lot of stuff in the process and procedures, and also in the leadership training section. These don't scream out to you as being VR, but it's about putting people in a scenario, in a context that gives them that message, that training message. So, a lot of what we're doing in our platform and what it's tailored for is creating soft skills training. So you can put someone very quickly through an experience with bots. You can also do live workshops and instructor-led training in the platform, but most of what we focus on is the self-paced learning experiences with bots and environments. And that's something where you can allow someone to have that exercise component of what would normally be abstract information being told to people. Imagine you're in this scenario, or this is what you should do for effective listening. But when you get into an actual experience and do that, that's when it becomes something user-centric, something that I'm learning, some memory that I'm taking away. For soft skills, our platform is ideal for that. And that's what I mean about VR ready versus VR only. VR only will be the skills that can only, you've got to put on a headset, you've got to have the hand controllers and be interacting with the environment. But that's a small subset of the overall learning objectives which are trying to be addressed in the market.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, because that's the part that I could see, just that physical stuff is a small part of what we do. And I think that's why VR has always been around and it's been used, but it's just been in those niche markets, right? There's always been forklift training, flight simulators, all that kind of stuff where it's really expensive to build, but a market was built for that kind of stuff. And, and it exists and it's out there, but it never, I knew we were getting close to the soft skills training within it, but, man, it's really cool to see that, we can do that now. So psyched.
Yeah. And deliver these things within a reasonable budget.
Well, that was my next question, right? So from a business perspective, what are we talking about when, if we have to go to our management and say, I just heard this guy on TLD cast and I think I found a new tool for us, what are we going to have to convince people of?
Well, a normal project goes something like this. You start with your learning outcomes that you're looking for, and then you'll perhaps get a couple of Unity programmers involved. You'll have to have a 3D artist, a voiceover artist, and graphic designer involved. And there'll be the instructional designer or the knowledge designers that then pass that across to all these people that go and do the various components, and they come back to hopefully what you're looking for as a project. And a typical project, depending on which device you're deploying to. So think about all the different virtual reality equipment on the market today. There are augmented reality headsets like the HoloLens, and they're a $3,000 piece of equipment. The Magic Leap, which is really a developer version at the moment, about $2K. The other headsets range anywhere from $700 down to the new Oculus Go, which is around $200. Or you can use a cardboard device, but I wouldn't recommend that as anything that you would deliver to training seriously. But you start to add up how many of those devices you want, which device do you want to compile your training to work on. I'm building an app for the HoloLens, or I'm building an app for Windows mixed reality devices, or the Rift, or the Vive, or do I want it to work on Daydream? So you compile apps for different platforms. So it gets really expensive really quickly. So even just a bare bones, very simple one can cost around $15K up to $200K to create an app, maybe targeted to just one device as your delivery mechanism. And that's just not really sustainable. So there are a few people doing a few things like that, but what it really needs to hit is the same mark as traditional e-learning, that you're using, your authoring tools, and you can produce an e-learning module with your existing resources and skills, and don't need all this extra stuff, but also that you can deploy one, just like the web, deploy in one way, and it spreads out and works on all the devices, like responsive design. We knew how much that shook up the e-learning industry. No more 800 by 600 square windows anymore. We've now got to think about how does all this content mix and match in different orientations of devices. So that shook up the industry, and the tools took a while to catch up. And VR is another layer on top of that, delivering to all the different devices, flat screen and the headsets. And that's something we've built into our platform. So you don't need to think about that. As long as there's a browser on the end device, which there are on all of them, you can deliver the training in the VR experience immersively, and on mobile, tablet, and desktop and laptop. So that's all been taken care of, which leaves you to focus on the content. And that is about setting up the 3D environment, setting up the actions and reactions that happen in the environment, and more often than not, creating branching scenarios with bots as part of that experience. So that now is available in the tools that we have, that range from, depending on a full campus, is $25K per year, down to a freelancer version, which is $99 a month. So that gives you the tool set that you can start to build with and deploy across every device, and also package them up in SCORM modules that sit inside a learning management system. So it's all part of the existing chain of tools. And that for me is a game changer to bringing VR right down into existing today's training and what the training objectives are. And that's why I'm super excited.
I mean, it's all, and now I'm just going to go down the black hole of checking out your website and all your links for the rest of the day. So thanks. My productivity is now shot. So thanks for that. But
enjoy.
I'll count it as future productivity. But I'm curious, as Jonathan mentions, massively multiplayer. You did mention, can multiple people get into one of the scenarios and hang out and do it together? And is that a different version of the software, or what's
no, it's all bundled together. So you choose if you want it to be a self-paced learning experience, or you want it to be multi-user where you can have many people in, and you can kind of hybrid the two as well, have bots that you speak to as individual gamification items. So maybe I'm going through a gallery and I have to speak to 5 different bots. Each person has to do that, and they get scored on the achievements of all of those tasks they do individually. But as a team, we're all in there together having the same experience. So that can mix and match really well. In fact, we have been using the multi-user component of it in VR for our stand-up remote meetings every morning. So I have a bunch of remote staff. We get in there every morning, and we are collaborating in this virtual environment. We pin documents to the walls for marketing and sales and development, and we have 3D experiments we're doing, and we're all in there as avatars. I actually did an experiment a couple of months ago. I decided, because we support video streaming as well. So I said, hey, why doesn't everyone just get a video stream? We'll sit in front of our laptop or camera on your phone, and we'll have videos of everyone in the room at the same time. And the remote workers said, no, Well, actually, it was about 10% said yes, but the rest were like, we don't want to do video. We much prefer having the avatars and voice as the way that we're communicating. This is what we like. So, you know, that was an interesting experiment. But we've been doing that for over a year now, and it's not only productive but really fun. So for a multi-user.
Yeah, I've got a lot of ideas just bouncing around in my head right now, and so you and I are going to have to connect afterwards and talk a lot more. But we're at that 10-minute mark. Thank you, Quetzalcoatl, for keeping me in line. Today's producer extraordinaire, keeping me in line. Thank you, sir, for doing that. And we need to just start dropping some links. And I know we've dropped in a lot, but Danny, how can people get a hold of you?
Well, you know, if you want to email me, it's danny@learnbrite.com. So feel free to ask me any questions. Happy to share what I know. There's a link to the website. You can sign up and straight off, just enter your details. You go straight into a web-based tutorial with your own room where you can decorate and create bots and 3D environments. Really 10 minutes and you'll have it mastered. So give it a go. That's a 30-day free trial. You know, build content for your prospective clients, sell a project before you've even had to pay for the software.
Yeah, right.
That's generally how people go. Just have fun with it. Try it out. I do weekly webinars as well on the product, so you're most welcome to join. And we're also sponsoring various shows with our VR auditoriums. So you'll see us around more and more. And late last year we did a VR MOOC as well as part of a European funded thing. So we did that with Moodle, and we had the live auditorium all linked into the learning management system there. So it was the first VR MOOC about VR and AR. All the rest have talked about it, but none were in it. So that's what we can start to do.
Oh, that's great. Well, it sounds like there's a couple people already in the environment that you linked to the auditorium. So as soon as we're done here, I'll jump in and hang out with everybody too, and we can continue this conversation. But so are you going to be back in town for TLDC 19 and hanging out with us? Or
I may not be there physically, but I definitely want to be involved in some way if I'm not able to get there physically. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Sounds good. Well, listen, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. And we will definitely be engaging with you further, and I'll connect with you after the show too. So
fantastic.
Very, very much appreciated. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
Oh, thank you, everyone, and your wonderful questions. If I haven't answered them, email me. Happy to get into a conversation or give you a personal demo of a VR campus. So yeah, please get in touch.
Yeah, it's perfect. And sorry, guys, I didn't get to all the questions in the Ask a Question section. We can move them over to TLD chat too and continue talking there about VR because, as they say, it's the future. So it's all good.
Yeah, I'm in the Slack as well, so I can see you there.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks, Danny. I'm going to close out your video and we'll wrap things up. Thanks, man.
Thank you, sir.
All right, guys, another TLD cast is in the can, and wow, what a fantastic one it was. Thanks again, Danny, for hanging out with us and sharing virtual reality with us and the new realities of virtual reality and the things that we can do as instructional designers and learning and development professionals. Lots and lots of different options, it sounds like, that we can take advantage of. So very, very excited about it. Again, like I said, I don't meet many people. Actually, I haven't met anybody in a long time that actually knew the name Superscape. So it's been a nostalgic morning for me, but super fun as well. So I get the feeling I'm going to be a big fan and very quickly. So I'll jump in there after we're done here. Don't forget, you guys, TLDC 19, share it with your friends. You guys, we got less than a week and a half until the event. Super excited about it, as always. You know what else we've got coming up that I forgot to mention is this Friday, Trish Ewell does a fantastic workshop about getting ready for an event and prepping yourself and doing the work ahead of time before you go to an event like TLDC. Everything that she's going to teach us actually could apply to any event, but she comes in and she does this for us. She did it for TLDC 16, which was the very first TLDC event that Luis and I did. And it was just wonderful and fantastic. And so she's volunteered to do that again for us. And so this, you should have gotten an email if you're registered for the event or if you're on our mailing list. It'll be noon. I think I listed it as. It's also on our dashboard on Crowdcast. It's in there as well for this Friday. So it's not during TLD cast. So don't get confused. It will not be a TLD cast on Friday. It's going to be later on, a couple hours later, as a completely separate cast, probably going about 90 minutes because we're going to get in there and do some work, right? And really prep ourselves for the upcoming event so that everybody gets all the value that they want out of it. And also, I just have to give a huge shout out to Trish and also to Shannon Tipton. Luis and I decided that we were going to give away some free registrations for the event to folks that have been impacted by the U.S. government partial shutdown. And so we're still looking for any learning and development or training professional that has been directly impacted by that shutdown. Maybe you're not getting a paycheck. Maybe they completely shut down the training departments. It could be any number of ways that you've been impacted. But if you have been impacted by the shutdown, just know that you have a free reg. Reach out to us. But even better than that, if you're not in Phoenix, Arizona, excuse me, both Trish Ewell and Shannon Tipton stepped up and said they would cover a round trip airfare to get somebody within the U.S. from wherever you're located to Phoenix and back, which I just think is amazing for our community. And it really moved me when I saw Trish throw that out on Twitter. To just know that there's so many folks that are so giving and willing to be so helpful to other members of our community during hard times. And it definitely re-strengthens my resolve to doing TLDC and why we do this and why you're all here and why we are all here to support each other. So if you know anybody that's been impacted, please spread the word. Let them know that we now have some options available and we can help folks get to the event and have a positive professional development experience, even during a time when budgets may be frozen or salaries may be cut, or you may have just completely lost your job because of the shutdown. So we want to support anybody that's being impacted by this government shutdown, and that's the strength of our community for you right there. Just really impressive group of folks. So anyways, I just wanted to throw that out there, and again, just say thank you to both Trish Ewell and Shannon Tipton as well for stepping up and offering that and supporting us in what we're trying to do as well. So, and thank you all for supporting us on such a regular basis. I know not everybody can support us financially, but I do appreciate you sharing the work that we do here, sharing it on social media, talking to your friends about it, just showing up and sharing your knowledge too is so incredibly valuable and being a part of the community. Thank you all so much. You guys really make it what it is. And reminds me every single day why I love this community and why I love doing what I do. So everybody get out there today and train somebody, and don't forget to learn something new. And I'll see you in the VR auditorium. Adios, everybody. Aha!